Damn, man. Back in Maine, Tony here, Patio Slay Podcast. I'm cold as balls because I just came back from Florida. If you guys have been following along on these social media posts that we put up, I was on the Gulf of Mexico yesterday as we're recording this. And today, back in sunny southern Maine where it was about 40 degrees colder. So, how you boys doing tonight? I'm fucking cold.
Wow, what an entrance. Anthony here. Now everyone knows when we recorded this. You exposed all our trade secrets, dude.
Oh, no.
Where in the world is Tony Patio Slave Pod?
What is your social security number? You were about to drop that too.
I would have cut that out, so yeah. Yeah, how you boys doing? I was on vacation for a week, but I mean, the pod rolls on. We continue to put out episodes. We continue to put out content. That's why you got pictures of me up against the beach at the Gulf of Mexico. But yeah, how you guys doing?
Last snowfall. We're talking weather now. That's how you know we're getting desperate on topics here. Last snowfall in Maine, hopefully for the year. So that's a good thing. I mean, we didn't have sunshine weather like Gulf of Mexico. Nate, what are you, sunshine tax man over there? How you doing?
Yeah, sunshine tax in SoCal. Although I'm not in the sunshine state, I'm in Austin, Texas, the music capital of the world, as they say. I don't know if that's
really
an accurate statement. Every time I hear that, I'm like, everyone, like New Orleans says that, Austin says that, like Nashville says that. Like
I say it about Long Island all the time.
I know, yeah.
Like who's really?
No one agrees with me.
Yeah. Who's got the claim to fame? Portland, Maine.
Yeah,
not necessarily.
Hey, Lewiston, Maine.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, so I'm in Florida, right? And we're watching the weather, as we're talking weather, and there's a Clewiston in the middle of Florida, and I was like, "What the fuck? Is there a Clobbered too? I didn't know what was going on." Back to the deep Maine lore.
What? Who? So, I mean, you clicked on the episode. You know what we're going to talk about. Do we want to get into that, or do we get any trivia this week?
Oh, do you have a trivia question, Tuan? You always have something.
Yeah, you got trivia.
I don't have one. That's what I'm asking you guys.
All right, so what is the music capital of the world? That's our trivia for tonight. No, let's just fucking jump right into it. We've got a lot to say about this band, as we've talked about them a ton, but we are going to deep dive Clutch's Blast Tyrant, which is a record near and dear to our hearts, a band that we would call a house band, I think. And we've talked about Clutch a ton, but we've never really deep dove, a record or a show or any of that stuff. So we're going to do that tonight.
Have we, though? Have we talked about them a ton? That's what I was thinking about. For a potential, I would say house band. I don't know if we have.
I don't think we have.
3 years in, how have we not? There's some certain bands where I'm like, how have we not talked about them? So, I mean, we're due, but it's just kind of funny how that, we got distracted along the way.
Well, it's two parts. I think it's part like, let's save it because it's so sacred, right? There's always that element, like the Rage Against the Machine thing, like, hey, our Tool, like sacred bands, like we don't want to overexpose, we don't want to like reciprocate these stories that are like so sacred, so let's hold on to it. But the other part of it is like, yeah, we got, we geek out a lot, so we don't want to like give away everything.
Yeah, we've talked about them, I guess, in passing when they've made news, but I don't know that we've done any kind of like talk about the music per se. So let's do that. We're gonna do that right now with Clutch's Blast Tyrant. Which, how do we want to start this? Do we want to like throw out early memories of it? Do we want to throw out where we first heard it? Any of that stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a good, because that'll kind of get our personal juices flowing. How's that for a visual?
Yep.
Wow.
How's
Nate, it's officially NC-17.
Yeah.
So when we publish this, it asks if it's
Spotify,
explicit or clean, and I've never hit explicit. I've always hit clean.
So if you've got kids in the car, earmuffs. Fucking earmuffs right now. No, let's do that. All right. So I'll lead off because I'm ready to go. Nate got me into this band. My early memories of the band in general were trying to see them in Portland at the old Asylum, which is now Aura, and not being able to get in because I don't think I was old enough. But this record in particular, Nate was like, if you're going to start anywhere, this is, early, it came out in 2004, so this is probably 2006-ish. He's like, you got to check this record out. The band is awesome. Listen to the back catalog, listen to Elephant Riders, listen to Pure Rock Fury, but listen to this first because it's probably their best album. And this is, a year or two after it came out. looking back on it today, I would say I think it is still, but we can get to that down the road. But yeah, Nate got me into these guys really, 15, 16, 17 years ago, and I've been a huge fan of the band ever since because of it. But this record was kind of the tipping point.
Can you confirm or deny that, Nate?
It's bragging rights when
you're
you get
slow to own it, man. Own it. Yeah, I showed you that shit.
Well, I'm humbled because it's like I don't feel like I, have paved that way enough. And when you get that credit, it's humbling because it's like, when it's a band that's important or that someone holds to high regard, there's a level of appreciation that you're like, I'm that guy. Like it's almost like having a kid and showing them the way. Like this is a band that's important and this is why. Especially if it's not like the ultimate mainstream band that like you're eventually going to find out about. Clutch is very much like left of center. They were on like a lot of festivals and lineups that were almost different in a lot of ways, like metal bills, and all of a sudden there's Clutch, and like Clutch definitely has some metal sensibilities, but they're not a metal band. So interestingly enough, like they've found a way to make their way onto different areas of the music industry that don't really correlate logically. And so I'm proud to that fact that I introduced this to Tone, and my way of finding this band was very left of center. It was like blue collar work, work ethic in Maine, like working on the fish docks, like rough environment, working with some coworkers, sorting fish species in Portland, Maine. And someone started playing Clutch, and I was like, this band, what is this? This is pretty rad. And instantly became a fan and started following them. Had it not been that moment in time, call it 2002, I don't even know if I would know who this band was, because it just doesn't, like they weren't on the radio. No one was talking about them, even though they were on certain metal bills. They were not properly promoted at the time. And they're like a stoner rock band. So like even stoner rock was like, if you knew, you knew. If you didn't, like, you're never going to find out about this band. So I was lucky to find out about them in that kind of unique experience. And so to pass the torch to Tone on the legacy of this band is something I feel proud about.
So both go way back. For me, it was at the college radio station I worked in. Actually, it was in this album cycle, I think, is when I got into them. I did check my spreadsheet of all the shows I've ever been to, and they're on it once, but I have no recollection of ever seeing them. So it was Candiria at the Asylum. But
what was the date?
I think it was 2002, 2003, maybe.
So yeah, they're on either Off Cycling, Pure Rock Fury, or like the second leg of that tour, probably. Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
Because it was Scissor Fight, which fits in with Clutch perfectly. But Clutch must have opened, so that shows you, how much longevity plays into a lot, seeing where they're at today. But it was this album cycle. I personally own 2 of their CDs, this one and then Robot Hive, which was the one after that. So it was in that 03 to 07 time frame when I worked at the radio. Mm-hmm. That's when I was like, all right, this is pretty wild. Because you got to remember, like, in that era when this came out, you had new metal on life support. You had American metalcore taking over the world. You had pop punk, which was thriving, all the bands, and then you have Clutch. As far as like guitar music, all those different genres. Then you have Clutch, which is like, I hear influences of other things I like, but this is its own thing, and that's what was the draw.
Absolutely,
for me.
Yeah, I would agree. They were their own thing, and they still are their own thing, and that's kind of why they've been able to last 30 plus years as a band, because they've been able to do them. Like, there is no other Clutch. Like, Clutch is Clutch, and you know it, you hear it, you're like, that's a Clutch song. And it doesn't even have to be the same sounding as another Clutch song. I would argue this record is probably the most cohesive Clutch record out there. There might be 1 or 2 other ones that are in that vein, but they don't sound like those other ones either. So the fact that they're able to do that over and over again with, still sounding like them is amazing.
And they are their own thing. And anyone that has this sound, you will say that it's not authentic and it's a knockoff. But Clutch, it's like you can see it, smell it a mile away. And it's kind of maybe gimmicky in some spots, but that's them,
Yeah, well said. There's a gimmick there, which is almost like there's a humor there. There's like a not take yourself too seriously. But at the same time, if you're like a musician, this is like musicians. I think we've talked about it on here, highlighted it, that there's certain bands that are like musicians. Like Clutch is actually one of them. So
Agreed.
the fact that they're like,
I agree,
parroting their work, but also like executing to like 10 out of 10 is like an interesting dynamic, because they're like making fun of like rock and roll cliche, but also executing the rock and roll cliche 10 out of 10 at the same exact time simultaneously is like kind of a mind fuck, to be honest.
It's better than the assholes they're parroting.
Yeah,
parodied.
exactly.
No, you're right. I mean, they do have that kind of tongue-in-cheek vibe on some stuff, but then at the same time, it's fucking masterwork, right? Like, it sounds so fucking good. So, okay, yeah. So we all remember this in the moment-ish when it came out. I was a little later than you guys, but not long after getting into it. And I mean, now we've lived with it it's been out for almost 20 years. I think on the day we're recording this, it's a couple days shy of its 19th birthday, which is wild, and also nerdvoyance, because I don't think we knew that when we decided to do this.
No, it's just, yeah. And we tend to lean into the anniversaries. Like, we don't always have to. If there's an album we love, show it some love, man.
Yeah,
and that was exactly what we were doing with this. We were just showing it love because we loved it. And to have it also just kind of coincide with that was kind of funny to me, and more nerdvoyance, which we always bring up. But the thing that in looking and prepping, I saw that it was their 6th studio album, Blast Tyrant.
Crazy.
And we've talked before, like, you know, the first album by a band is their best album. The second album by a band is their best album. How many get to 6 and have an album this fucking good? Not many, right?
Not many at all. If I mean, it'd be a case. We'd have to study our catalog to even.
It'd be hard. It'd be hard to get to 4 and be like, whoa, that's a really good album. How'd they pull that off on number 4? But these guys did it on 6, and then I mean, I think they did it again on 8 and 9, but that's a different story. But yeah, man, they just rule. And you know, the live show is awesome. They always find ways to places like Portland, Maine. They always come through us. I'm seeing them in a couple of weeks again. Saw them 2 years ago. Saw them 4 years before that. Like, they make their way to their fans, which is always awesome. And that's the type of stuff that keeps you coming back to a band like that.
Yep, from Baltimore, Maryland, right? The band. So they're somewhat Northeast centric. And yeah, like you said, live show. If you've never seen Clutch live, their live show is a spectacle. Mainly Neil Fallon is the ultimate frontman. Like, I don't know if he was like in drama class in high school or something, but like there's a dramatic, like, showmanship, like almost like circus vibe that is unparalleled. That I've never seen it in anyone else other than maybe Perry Farrell to an extent. And then the band is just so tight, like drummer, bassist, everyone in that band is so tight. So you have like this perfect culmination of like artistry, but also like showmanship. And like we were talking about earlier, like kind of digging at the cliches, but also executing at the same time. And like you said, 6th album too. So really unique spot for this band.
Well, and they've been the same foursome for quite some time too. They didn't start with Neil. It was the other 3 guys, Jean-Paul, Tim, and Dan before that, and a different vocalist. But not long after they formed, they brought Neil in. And I mean, obviously that was a gigantic win for them, because Neil is such a different and amazing vocalist and a showman.
So how do we want to approach this? Track by track, I think is too cliche. Maybe we can just throw out some kind of topics or themes. Sequence of songs. Perfect. Mercury, the minute intro, and then just isolated vocals. I mean, come on. Like that, we always talk about, did a band, you know, make the first song on the album intentionally, or did they have a plate of songs and, you know, out of those they picked an opener? I feel like this was the opener from the jump. Had to have been.
I think you're right. And you're right. It's a great, like, you're going to get this kind of vibe from us, and then the music stops and Neil jumps into the first line of the record, and you're like, whoa, okay, we're in for a fucking ride right now.
Well,
and
you think it's over.
Song.
You think the song's done.
And it's a short, I mean, it's not a super long song, but it gets its point across, and it kind of prepares you for what you're going to get next.
Yeah, I'd say it's accurate. I mean, there's no way to know unless we talk to them directly, but the sequence is pretty solid. I listened to it again today in prep for this, and it was like, man, like, it flows together perfectly right until like the secret song. You're like, oh, is it over? No, it's not over. A little instrumental track that comes in a little bit later. and actually showcases how good the rhythm section is for this band, because it's 10 out of 10. Like, they could, I think we've talked about it before. It's another one of those bands that like could be a full-on instrumental band and be fucking solid. In fact, when I lived in Florida, St. Petersburg specifically, Neil had some kind of vocal issue where like it was day of show and they announced like, oh, Neil's got like strained vocals. He's not going to be able to perform, but they're going to perform as the Bakerton group, which is basically all of Clutch, including Neil, just playing like rhythm and guitar. And they're going to play the show. They're not going to cancel. They're going to play, but they're going to play as the Bakerton group instead, almost as like a default instrumental version of Clutch. So it just shows that they can stand on their own in multiple dimensions, which is pretty rad.
It's amazing. I didn't know that story. And we've talked, I mean, you and I have seen the band together, 3 or 4 times.
So many stories.
Yeah, and like we just continue to have stories. All these things just keep bubbling up to the surface that I didn't know about. Like, oh, you lived in Florida, bro? I didn't.
Just all the shows we've seen, there's just unique stories to every story. I mean, to every show. So
absolutely, man. Yep.
And then I think I'm going to probably mispronounce it, but La Curandera, the second to last song, that's a perfect placement for that song. The second half, just the guitars just go so hard, and then, you know, it kind of has a soft landing with the instrumental. It's perfect. It's perfect.
I had that written down, that like kind of breakdown in the middle to the end of it as a highlight of the record. And yeah, good call. That's Nerd Sees Nerd on that one, Twan.
Nerd Sees Nerd confirms nerd and carries on.
Third nerd chimes in. Agreed.
Third nerd is
nerd confirms the nerdery.
Third nerd.
Third nursing. Third.
Yeah. The third nursing. Yeah. Oh man. No. So it's. I agree with you. I think sequencing for me is perfect. I'm not sure there's anything I would change about it.
Yeah, sequencing. I guess if you listen to the Clutch albums from inception to this record, there is a shift in terms of production. There's a very like heavy production element with this record, but not in a bad way. And interestingly enough, we were talking about like, how do you make like a perfect quintessential record for your band's legacy this far in? I don't know what it was. I mean, they were already signed to a major, right? Even Elephant Riders, I think, was on Atlantic.
Come on, man. So, they worked with Machine. What do you think it was?
They did work with Machine, very legendary producer that we've been trying to get on this podcast. Yeah, like the production element for this record in particular is very strong in a good way. It's, I don't want to say it's overproduced, but it's produced in a way that like really accentuates the rhythm section in a way that like you realize like, oh, like their guitarist, is it Tim Salt, I think? It's like, damn, he's fucking Tom Morello level, which is a fucking bold statement. Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine, but like very, very strong like solos, but just like the whole time, like you may like get lost in their like instrumental value, but like you realize like he's standalone one of the best guitarists in the industry, and you see it in this record because of the production. So like you realize, I think maybe on another nerd level, that like production can really elevate individuals in the band because the volume's turned up.
Well, one note I took while listening to this, I listened in prep for this, I listened through it, I think 3 times.
Nerd notes,
exactly. And what I thought of was, this is what Audio Slave should have sounded like.
Nice.
Because this has Rage footprints all over it, guitar wise. There's, you know, the guitar cadence, some scratching and stuff, like things like that. But this, in a weird way, almost has a little more soul than Audio Slave, which I don't know. And we've talked about it. I think Audio Slave's overrated, but that's just me. You know, we're all entitled to our opinions.
Yeah, it's okay, Tom. We still love you.
Check the pod name. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but like as I was listening to it, I was like, this was like the potential of Audio Slave.
That's interesting because I don't think I'd ever thought of the two bands together, or like the Rage aspect, or the I guess the virtuosity of Tim Salt as a, you know, a soloist.
Promoter, you listen to that and you're like, all right, this
so good. Yeah.
This is like a hot take pretzel, but like I agree with you, but I'm like,
let's hear it.
No, I'm just ingesting right now.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to go through the nerd brain, like, and it does not.
Ingesting, digesting.
Well, it's like 2 of my favorite bands.
Word
so like,
vomit.
Yeah. It's great that it's a great comparison because I think they as a band are that tight, are that good. we always talk about Rage being a band that the three of us absolutely love front to back. We've championed them on this podcast from day one, but I've never thought of the two side by side. And you're right, I do think there's a little different, obviously, sound, and there's a little more soul in that than obviously Audioslave for sure. Not necessarily Rage, but Audioslave for sure.
Agreed. Yeah. So Nate, were you going to give a hot take or?
No, I said it. I said what you said is a hot take.
Oh, okay.
But what I was
I thought it was going to get spicy right now.
No, what I was alluding to is it's not something I disagree with, which is the hot take, I guess. It's your hot take, and then my hot take squared, nerdery squared, which is like, wow, I never, like Tone said, I never thought of it that way. And it's interesting because I don't think anyone, and if there's anyone out there that's listening that had this comparison, like, please speak up or contact us. Like, putting Clutch against the Rage Against the Machine rhythm section is like huge. It's like a giant dynamic because you have one of the biggest bands in music history against Clutch, which is like a if you know type band, really. I mean, let's be honest here. They're a great band, but a lot of people might see them in a newspaper ad or whatever and just not flinch because they just would never know the talent that exists in that band that is parallel to like one of the biggest bands in the music history. So yeah, not necessarily hot take, but like I agree with you, but I've never thought of it that way, which is why we do this, because it's like it puts everything in a different perspective of, yeah, you're right. I think Audioslave is one of my favorite bands. And you have Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, one of the best vocalists of all time, rest in peace. But were they, on some kind of crutch because they were combining two greats and leaning on just the greatness rather than where can we go, which is Clutch has that flexibility because they're not fully appreciated, where they can go into that artistry into a different dimension, which is really like a blessing in disguise when you really think about it.
I think I'm going to disagree with you. And you said it a couple of times that I don't think they're under the radar. They've been around 30 years. People know who Clutch is at this point. Whether you like them or not, it's different. And case in point, I've been with my wife for almost 15 years, and I put on Blast Tyrant while we were making dinner, just as prep. She's stuck now. She's pot committed, so she's got to listen to stuff like that every now and then. But she knew I liked them and had heard songs in the past. But tonight she was like, I like this more than I thought I was going to. Like,
I thought you were going to say the reverse.
And some of it, she didn't like all of it. I mean, it's not all for her, but at the same time, she was like, this is dancier than I remember. This is a little more upbeat than I remember. It's not as... Because Neil can sound angry, but he's not. Like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about half the time, but I love what he's, the way he does it. So she was getting more into the groove aspect of the soul aspect that you mentioned, Juan. And that's somebody who's, they're under the radar, but they're not. She knew who they were, and then she finally got an appreciation for them. And I think anybody that spends time with the band would find that. Any music nerd is going to be like, this band fucking rules.
Yeah, I agree. And there's something that you said in that made me think of, like, it's such a confident album. This chance is taken that others wouldn't. And we've talked about this, talking about other bands and albums where, this album could not have been their first album. Like, could you imagine a new band called Clutch has a song called Worm Juice, and there's this fucking the
Worm
mob
drink
goes wild song? Like, there's just this confidence, and they're comfortable in their own skin that just I don't think you can teach, and it doesn't come immediatly. They're just them.
No,
that's a great call. It's a great call, and it's interesting that it's their sixth album, because this is usually, with that kind of layout that you just mentioned, that's usually the third record, or maybe even the second, or fourth if you really want to stretch it. But sixth is really a stretch. So, and it's usually after like signing to a major label, which they had already been part of a major label. So the whole like cadence of like Clutch's risk taking, whatever you want to call it, is out of order with this band's like legacy. And then, like, for me personally, like, I remember thinking down to like geeking out, and like, in fact, I worked the show on this touring cycle at Asylum, which is now Aura in Portland, and thinking, fuck, man, I really like their logo. Why did they switch up their logo? I really like the classic Clutch logo, and being like bummed out that they even changed that up. And then realizing like, oh, this is like not a concept record, but this is a different direction. Like you said, that confidence, like, we're going to change up everything. We're going to like do a whole piece. Like this is like Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf. Like this is a full cohesive unit, and we're gonna change everything. Fuck the logo, you know?
Yeah, good point. And they were able to obviously pull it off and continue to pull it off. So let's play a little game. This is on the fly, but I kind of wrote some stuff down. I want to see if you guys agree with me.
Yeah, no rules.
The name of the record isn't just Blast Tyrant, but Blast Tyrant on the whole, just by itself. Bandicap or Van Vantage?
Blast Tyrant, Band Vantage.
Nate?
I've never thought of it that way, but I'm gonna say Band Vantage. Yeah,
I agree. I wrote down Band Vantage. I think it's a great album title, the shortened version. Would you like me to read you the longer version?
Sure.
I'm reading it now, but yes.
Blast Tyrant Atlas of the Invisible World with illustrations of strange beasts and phantoms. So, if you're listening to this, not the day that it came out, but maybe the next day or the day after, check our socials. I'll have some of those strange pictures have been put up because I've got the vinyl sitting right next to me with a few of them in the sleeve. So there's some truth to that name, but that name would have been a Bandicap, that length.
Well, and to look at what it, the album before this was Pure Rock Fury. You know what I mean? Just very simple, which was great, but very simple. And to get back to your point, Nate, of the artwork, it was them in like a field on the cover, and with the classic Clutch logo with the maroon and yellow, just classic. And then they go Blast Tyrant with a funky ass name, even funky stripped down, funky visuals, but it
you don't
works.
do that on record 1 or 2, right? Yeah.
No, you don't. And it works. Like, well, what is going on the cover?
I don't fucking know. It's like a goblin of some sort on a throne on some clouds, maybe. That's my guess.
I'm holding up the booklet, which is not like you wouldn't even know it goes to the same album.
No, right?
Yeah. Usually that's like the independent release artwork,
and like once you start, Tone's holding up some gold here. Yeah, it's basically what's in the CD booklet, but in color, which is cool. Yeah, and it kind of vibes with the front artwork. But I wonder, like, what was the vision? Did they just like let an artist cook and say, "Hey, come up with something," or were they like almost like an AI generated bot? Like, "Hey, I'll put in Goblin plus Cloud and see what comes out."
In 04, I guess 03 probably, right, when they were trying to figure out what they wanted to do. That's a great question, and at the same time, like, I don't. You don't do this early. Like, it's just like, hey, we're just gonna go fucking ham with all of this stuff out of nowhere. Like, people are just gonna have to deal with it, and it fucking all landed. I think it's all a advantage. Getting back to that, I mean, song title names: Prophets of Doom, but Profits.
Oh my god!
Like money. Fucking Band Vantage all day. Great fucking song title. The Mob Goes Wild.
Untouchable.
So fucking good, right? Subtle Hustle. Just the way that flows off your tongue, man. Ghost, Regulator. There's so many fucking good songs on here and so many good names. It's just Band Vantages everywhere.
You know what's funny you say that? So much of like song Band Vantage ties into like the mouthpiece of who's producing it. Like Ghost, great song title. Ghost band name? It's like,
I guess it depends,
it's like it depends on the source, and like there's an element of cool with Clutch. I guess that's my point, is like with Clutch, there's an element of coolness. Like if Five Finger Death Punch had an album called The Elephant Riders, I'd be like, that's stupid. But Clutch, I'm in.
It fits with Clutch, absolutely.
Man.
That's a great
point. Are they the coolest rock band in the last 30 years?
Possibly. The positioning of, the titles and the imagery and when you guys were talking about the imagery, like, one band that came to mind was like Incubus, where like Incubus had Fungus Among Us, which was like that Blast Tyrant artwork is the demo. That's like the independent release artwork. Like, hey, let's get a local artist or Brandon Boyd for that matter to like put up some artwork, and like that'll be artwork. We can't afford to fucking hire someone. Let's do that. Clutch is the opposite. This is the 5th record in. They went that route. That's why this whole thing is like flip flopped. It doesn't like really make sense, and that's why I was pissed when like I was working the show and I was like, fuck, I want to get like the record signed. I did. And I was like, I really want it with that Clutch logo, but instead it's like this weird fucking stony imagery that like doesn't fit my whole like thing that I had on my wall, like with the logos.
It's all about Nate.
It's all about me. Like, not about you guys. It's about me. Like, what the fuck? You just fucked up my whole shit.
It's not about moving units. It's about my wall, bitch.
Yeah, like the aesthetic. I have a whole setup, and you guys just fucked it up with this record. Yeah, it just shows that. But also, like you said, like, are they the coolest band? Well, yeah, because it flips to that point, that script of like, well, you don't have to follow this like linear way of doing things. Like you just do your thing, and like that way, that actually makes you cool because you're standalone. So they were able to pull it off, and they continue to. But there's not many bands that, I mean, I can name a few. Queens of the Stone Age have done it. The Flaming Lips have done it. Clutch has definitely done it. Who else?
That's a great point.
But taking that risk, like you're really like just going on a whim, but also like really believing in yourself and the band's like music to showcase that artwork and full on optics to make sure that it's consistent. And I think that's, I mean, God, if you can do that, like you're set for life.
One, and they have their own kind of company, right? Weathermaker, also a band Vantage, or a company, record company name.
Yep.
Band. It's a great fucking name for any music, really. I mean, really anything. It's just badass. And for them to kind of see their vision through, it's all through that. And they, anytime they do something, I'm paying attention just because they've been awesome as far as I'm concerned for fucking, for me, 20 years, but for most people, 30 plus.
They're just a cool band. I mean, they in 2019 or 2018, they did that co-headline with Killswitch, which you're like, all right, that's kind of interesting pairing, but it works, and it's co-headline, so you know what level they're at. And then like last year, they brought out Quicksand and Helmet. So how many bands could tour with both Quicksand and Killswitch? You know, they're like the Swiss Army knife of.
Well, and didn't they co-headline with Mastodon too?
Yeah,
because that came through Portland, and I mean,
I went to that tour.
They fit with so many bands because they can live in all these worlds because they're fucking masters at their craft.
I love that.
I sound like Nate. Sorry, I sound like Nate there.
No, that's a good point.
This has turned into just a Clutch appreciation episode.
It really has. Yeah,
pretty much.
We kind of knew it was going to happen.
That Mastodon Clutch show. It's funny that you mentioned that because I drove up to LA. What was that, like 6 years ago? To see that Clutch Mastodon show, to see Clutch, but became a Mastodon fan at that show. So there's like a really like rewarding element to like a band that's that like transferable to get you into bands that like maybe you weren't really into or you didn't care about. And then like, well, now you're seeing them live, so you might as well stay for the show. And you're like, oh, fuck, they are good. If they're touring with Clutch, they have to be at least half decent. So I think that's fucking great. Also, although I found out about Clutch in like the weirdest fucking way, like working like this kind of grungy job, you start to like look back on like Clutch's legacy and realize like, oh, this band is like a band's band. Like System of a Down in particular, like they're always wearing Clutch shirts. And I'm like, oh, like people fucking love this band. But it's like, if you know, you fucking know.
I'm going to do you one better, Nate. They're a nerds band because we did the same thing. We did the same thing with Queens, right? When we went to Tattoo the Earth last summer, I was wearing a Queens of the Stone Age Rated R t-shirt. And if you don't know that, you're like, what the fuck are you wearing? But everybody, all of the musicians were like, fucking dope shirt, dude. Because they knew the Rated R. They knew the logo. They knew what it was. And you're a nerds band. That's what they are.
Well, when we saw Seven Dust, you had a Clutch shirt on and got approached at least once.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's just what happens when you're a nerd, right?
Yeah. Wear fucking nerdery shirts, and like that's the Tinder of fucking nerdery. Just wear a fucking geek shirt.
Let's talk Neil's vocals.
I like
so I like Neil when he's, and I'm not a vocalist. I don't know the proper like technical term, but when he's in like a higher register. So you have like Cypress Grove versus the talky, you know, the kind of the sing-songy talky stuff, but like Cypress Grove. And I thought, I don't know, do you guys remember Only Living's from Boston, metal-ish band? Well, the vocals are very much like Neil. So I'm wondering, like, were they influenced? I'm trying to think of the timeline. The first Life of Agony album, River Runs Red, very much in that vein. Like later, the band Twitching Tongues, same vibe. So I'm just wondering how many bands he's influenced. But like personally, I like that higher register, and he nails it. Like Cypress Grove, listen to Cypress Grove, you'll be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Agreed, and that's one of my favorite tracks on the record. But any of those kind of faster, everything's coming at you, and Neil throws the exclamation point on top. Those are like the pinnacle Clutch songs for me. And I like the slower, but I mean, Regulator is a badass song. Ghost is a badass song. So they do that well too. But when I'm looking for that kind of, like I said tonight, just listening to it again, realizing there's some kind of dancey aspects to them. Like it's not all, doom and gloom, Prophets of Doom, but there's upbeatness to it, and it's, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, but it's amazing. Like it just gets you kind of going. It gets you wanting to move around and shake around while you're doing shit.
Yeah. No, there's a theatrical element that elevates the song that's already fucking mint, but he brings it to another level. Like Neil is I think Randy Blythe of Lamb of God has said it on Instagram many times. He's like, we should all appreciate Neil Fallon for who he is, because he brings things to a different level. So yes, 100%.
So they play on the last 2 tours. I looked, they still play The Mob Goes Wild, Warm Drink, Subtle Hustle, and in some cases just maybe 2 of those 3, but like those ones they play. Question for you guys, because you guys are bigger, like the catalog. Like I know certain albums, you guys know the catalog. How is the Swollen Goat received, like in Clutch's world? And I'll, spoil it here. It's like one of my favorite songs on this album. So I'm just curious if that's as well respected as maybe I put it.
I don't think I've heard that song live. Man. But I would have to look back.
Rage riffs, just an album highlight for me.
I don't know that I've ever seen it live, but the song rules. I love the kind of backwards sounding riff at the beginning into like the drum and then they go. I hear you. I can see why that one's one that you like, but I don't know that they play. That's a deep cut, right? I'm not sure that they're dusting that one off as much live, at least. So I would love to see it. Okay. Yeah. Yep. But they do that. I've seen Prophets of Doom. I've seen Promoter. I've seen Regulator. I've seen Ghosts. I've seen most of this album played live over the course of, 4 or 5 shows. So I'm sure they've played it. I just maybe not on a cycle that I saw them on.
Yeah, it's not one that I remember, but I know like between that and Army of Bono, like there's a lot of Tom Morello, like, I don't want to say influence, because I don't know. We don't know until we talk to him, but like,
well, they're about the same. They're about the same age, so
that could be a Rage B-side, Army of, like musically. If you turn that on and like the last minute, that little breakdown, like the bass, listen to the bass, like you can feel it. If you have good headphones, it like permeates your soul, and that's what they do.
Yeah, and I would agree that, and going back to the Rage comparison, the rhythm sections are so tight that it makes everything else go. And if you ever like spent any time with this band, Clutch or Rage, you'll feel that and know that, because it's hard to miss.
I just played like a clip of Army of Bono, and I'm fucking just ready to pound beer.
I think that's the mission. That's the mission.
This whole record does that, man. And I mean, give me some highlights. Give me a highlight of another song or two that you guys are just. I want to put that one on when I'm thinking of them.
I mean, Warm Juice is untouchable. Like any band that has the lyric,
warm drink.
Warm drink. Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, why I got tripped up is, actually, you can keep this in, is the proof is in the juice, and that's why. Yeah. That's why I said warm juice. Hey, it's warm juice to me.
Hey, it's what it means to you. It's a personal story when you listen to these records.
Nate, Scotch tape that I wish you saw.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't connect with warm drink, but warm juice really spoke to me. Proof is in the juice, baby.
Up until like today, right now, I always thought that Ghost was eulogy of a ghost, and it's actually just Ghost. So,
yep.
But he does say it in the song, right? But in terms of like standout tracks, like Ghost is like so like out of nowhere in terms of like this record's cadence, where it's like not necessarily a ballad, because it's still a rock song and it still gets into a rock riff. But the entrance of the song, I'm like, am I listening to Pink Floyd right now? Like, what is this? Kind of just like fades into this like weird fucking gaze. Shows like the textures that this band is able to touch. And like, in fact, Clutch could write a whole record on just the vibe of Ghost and fucking kill it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Regulator, that one kind of fits in there too.
Yeah,
it starts kind of like acoustic guitar and then into that kind of slow riff. I fucking love that.
Yeah.
And like the picking on that song as it kind of picks up, and then they go hard at the end of it. That song fucking rules.
That's what I love. The fact that they build up. There's another Rage parallel that there's always a build. Not always. A lot of times there is a very much so a build up.
Mob Goes Wild's awesome. Go watch that video too. It's got the Jackass Boys in it. Ryan Dunn, Don Vito, Dick
Great
Camillo.
video.
Bam Margera was the director, I think, and looking at the research for this tonight, and a great video and great fucking lines. I mean, I've got a couple of lines from songs that just blow you away.
Oh, nice.
Everybody go to Canada, smoke lots of pot. Everybody go to Canada right now. In 2004 makes 2004. Way too much sense. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Bum rush the border. I listened to that in the gym today. I'm like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the first line of Prophets of Doom, born with a mustache and a supernova.
Oh, dude, that gets me I actually literally laugh out loud every time I hear that.
I can't not. It's so fucking good.
And that's like the parody of the band, which is like, dude, like just to write that down and record it, like, is hilarious.
I get your heaven. I get your burning hell.
Yeah, so good. So
good. Did you have others?
Those were the two ones that just jumped out at me. In the beginning of Prophets of Doom, that please allow me to undo my pants.
Yeah,
so why I dance a good time dance.
Oh,
so
best. That is the best.
Yeah, Nate, when you were moving out to California, right towards the end of your time in Maine, we hung out where you were living, which was Rob's at the time, and listened to this record while we were pre-gaming to go in town.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You don't remember that at all? Wow.
I mean, it probably happened a few times, but
well, yeah, so. That's true. I think I brought it over to your place in South Portland too, and we listened to it there. This record has kind of always just been around, which is why I fucking love it.
Yeah. The sentimental value to this record is very strong. Actually, that's why another reason why it's such a great record is because, like, and music in general, right? It's like you have like connections and memories and friendships that are tied to certain songs and records that are like elevate the record to another level, to another stratosphere. And this one is, between moving and just friendship and talking about it, deep diving on like the intricacies of this record in particular now is a nerd fest.
We're going to Nerd Fest.
Nerd Fest, yeah.
Well, you asked.
Third nerd.
Third nerds. Nate, you talked about, I think you said, am I listening to Clutch or Pink Floyd? I just looked up Neil Fallon's influences, and I know he's not necessarily the rhythm section, but there was a Metal Hammer, a little interview or kind of piece they did with Neil, and he cites 10 albums that changed his life. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. There's Bad Brains, self-titled. Black Sabbath, self-titled. So you can see the range. Fugazi, Public Enemy. He's all over the place. So what do all those bands have in common? Showman frontmans.
Oh,
Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
HR with Bad Brains, Ozzy with Black Sabbath, Ian with Fugazi. It's just like they make the band.
Yeah, people that household names in the nerd world, the nerd world country.
Oh, that's the king right there.
That is cool though. If you throw those in a blender, like Clutch does seem to be the output, so that actually is very intriguing.
All we're missing is like some bluesy stuff, but that's the musical aspect. The Tim and Dan and Jean Paul.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's Tom Waits on this list. There's a few other bands. So you throw all that in a blender, Funkadelic. You throw all this in a blender, you're getting Clutch. Like you're basically getting
Clutch. Yeah, it does check out.
All right, let me hit you guys with a question, and I think we got Tone's answer earlier. Is this the best Clutch record?
I really like Blast Tyrant. I really like the self-titled Clutch record. I put those like usually at 1 and 2. But after listening to Blast Tyrant today and in prep for this, and given the historical, personal connection to the record, I think I do put it at number 1, which honestly I never did before. I always put Blast Tyrant 1, self-titled 2nd, Blast Tyrant 3rd, and moved to 1st.
What, you had Blast Tyrant 1 and 3?
It's that good. It's that good. Yeah.
It's always been Pure Rock Fury, self-titled, and Blast Tyrant, but I think Blast Tyrant moved to number 1 actually after studying for this. But a lot of it has to do with personal connection to the record, so that shows that it it elevates the music to a different level given personal connection and just correlation and stories to, oh, this record means this much to me personally.
It's my favorite Clutch record, but I really love Earthrocker and I really love Psychic Warfare, and have spent a shit ton of time with those two as well. And Elephant Riders is really good. And the Book of Bad Decisions got some good songs on it. The new one's cool. They're one of my favorite bands, so you can't go wrong. It just depends on the mood you're in, but I think Blast Tyrant is one for me. Yep. It's
mine out of what I've heard. I've never heard Transnational Speed. I'm looking at the Discog now. Transnational, I've never heard. I've never heard Beale Street to Oblivion, Strange Cousins from the West, Book of Bad Decisions. There are a few that I've got into via you guys from the podcast, just from like Sunday spins and stuff, like Earthrocker, Psychic Warfare, and the new one I did check out, which is very good.
Earthrocker rules. I remember I was flying to our friend's wedding, and it came out that, like, we had a 6 a.m. flight, and it came out that day, and it was like the early having Apple Music time, so almost 10 years ago now I had it, and I remember downloading it or buying it or whatever, because I think I still did back then, and having it on my phone for the flight, and just, okay, we're flying from, I think we were in Boston, flying all the way to the Dominican Republic or Miami, and to go to this wedding, and I just fucking cranked it the whole way down and the whole way back, because it was a new Clutch record that I wanted to, just sink my teeth into, and that one's really, really high up, but Blast Tyrant's the best.
So I'm reading a review of Earthrocker, and people compare it to Blast Tyrant, and they praise it for kicking harder than a mule on steroids. Can you confirm?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's an interesting way of putting it, but yes.
It's got the same kind of stuff as Blast Tyrant does. It's got the funky titles of songs. It's got the tongue in cheekness of the we're making fun of the thing, but we're not, and then we're also fucking slaying it at the same time. Like the Wolfman Kindly Requests. Like, what a great fucking song title.
No, true.
Crucial Velocity.
The first time I listened to Earthrocker, I remember thinking this is like where Blast Tyrant left off. So it is kind of like could very well be B-sides of Blast Tyrant in a lot of ways. Great record.
Oh, it's I think it's better than B-sides, but I hear what you're saying. It's very this one, and then listen to Psychic Warfare, also fucking great. Like that record from front to back is so good. Fucking Quick Death in Texas is a badass song. We're doing this again. We'll come back to Clutch another time. We won't do all of the records right now, but man.
There is a common link between those albums, between Pure Rock, Blast Tyrant, Earthrocker, and Psychic Warfare. It's Machine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Little finger prints
in
there.
Little nerd note for you. Twan just put the glasses back up on his nose, just if you guys are wondering.
I can't see you guys. Where are you?
We love this fucking record. We love this band. I mean, shit. What else you guys got? You got anything else we want to add to this?
Not much, other than we lived it in the moment, or at least I did, working at the asylum. I think I highlighted this earlier, but I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit more. I was so like fanboying onto this band. Record dropped in 2004, right? So I was working at Asylum, which is now the Aura in Portland, Maine. I was not even of age to be in the venue, but I was bar backing. So I kind of like worked the system to be able to be in the venue to watch the show as an employee. So I would do a bar backing shift and then cut my shift right before the headliner came on, which was Clutch. And
trade secret, by the way. Trade secret.
It is a trade secret. So anyone listening, like, this is another nerd note. If you want to see a show and you're not 21, work a bar back shift. Make sure that you cut out before the headliner goes on, or even a little bit before if you want to see the opener, which I saw, Scissor Fight, great band, and see Clutch's full set for Blast Tyrant and fucking lived it and loved it, because Asylum or a small cap, I think at the time it was 500 cap, small.
Yeah, it was tiny.
And just like, because they were such, I want to say in their heyday, they still are, but like, especially since we're talking about this record being so tight, very much so in the show too. So it was just great to see them. Huge fan, in the tour cycle and everything, and just really living it. So really being stoked on them, and being like hospitality, so like bringing them the food and be like, oh, also can you sign my record? So I did it all.
And for those keeping track at home, Aura, the venue formerly known as the Asylum.
Yeah, exactly.
That and this show, which was probably September of 2005, Nate. I'm looking at the set list right now. 27 songs.
Jesus, calm down, guys.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm counting right now, just off the top of my head here. One, there's probably 3, 4, 5, 6 songs off of Blast Tyrant because it's probably the second leg of the Blast Tyrant tour. So,
I remember the merch table too had like T-shirts and some stuff, and like I don't think there was much vinyl, but vinyl wasn't. This just shows you like time and place. Like vinyl really wasn't big then, so it was like CDs everywhere and like one vinyl. If you want it, like here it is, but like obviously like you don't really care. Now vinyl's huge, so like everyone would be flock. It would be like kind of flipped. So it's interesting.
Yep. Well, shit. I mean, man, that would have been a badass show to be at. I'm jealous of you now.
I tried to get you in.
I know. I remember, Nate. I could see it clear as day. I'm not going to call anybody out right now, but I could see that moment in my head clear as day. And I'd have been a fan earlier on. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
We need to come up with a show regret term where it's not your fault.
Right. I tried.
Like,
I was there.
It's like someone else's fault. It's not regret because all the makings were there for me to be there. Exactly.
Show universe didn't give a fuck. Regret.
Yeah. Universe said fuck you or kicked on your ass. What happens? What happens in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when Uncle Phil throws Jazz out the house? That's what happened to me that night, essentially.
Show Doom Saloon.
Yeah. Yeah, that works. Yeah. All right, so yeah, we obviously massive fans of this record. If you haven't ever listened to it, I'm not sure how you get to this point, but if you haven't, go check it out. If you have, obviously you probably go back and listen to it right now, and I envy you. I might do that later as well.
Yeah, this is like, actually, maybe we end on this, and it doesn't have to be a long answer, just a short answer. Like, what is this album a soundtrack to you, for you? For me, it's kind of what we just did, hanging out with some friends, having a drink. Like that's what it is for me.
A fun record to play and just hang out with friends.
I agree. I've put this record on in a bunch of different scenarios in my life, but it always comes back to I'm just hanging out. I'm cracking a brew. Enjoying either talking about it with friends or by myself, throwing the vinyl on or something.
Man, classic record. And think about, if you're a listener to this podcast, we've only done the deep dive on maybe a handful, 10 albums at the most. So you know where this stacks up for us. So if you haven't heard it, go check it out. If you know it, spin it again. And we are going to see you guys next week.
We will be back again with the quickness next week with another episode of the Patio Slave Podcast. Peace, podheads.
Down with the quickness.
Next week to geek out, nerds. Cheers.
Master arithmeticness. Thank you for listening to Patio Slave. We are at Patio Slave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Patio Slave Podcast. YouTube, Patio Slave Podcast there. Email us at patioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.